Good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. I discovered a thing today. Look, I can go invisible, which is a benefit. And the other thing is, I seem to bought a piano, and I seem to live in a completely different house to where I normally live. I don't know when this feature got added to this, but I'd missed it. And I happened to wear this green T-shirt today when I did the lunchtime one and discovered I could disappear. So here we all are. It's been a funny old week, isn't it? Where should we start with this funny old week? Who wants to start with this funny old week?
Article 16, hobby flying. I have to say, the CAA have applied a bit of common sense with Article 16. Well, I think so for the most part. Now, Bruce is going to look at this, because if you like to fly FPV and you do drone racing, for example, and you're in a group or a club, if you're in a sterile area, you actually don't have to have a spotter. If you're drone racing and you're out there.
Do you have to have a spot? Is it you only need one spotter rather than one spotter per flyer, or you don't need a spotter at all?
From what I can... Oh, let me just check that for you. I have Article 16. Let me check. Let me not give you the wrong information. Oh, I've got it.
Because we'd hate for somebody to sort of claim something on a video and it end up being wrong, especially as regards the UK.
It is really good. So right. So here we go. Drone or FPV. The aircraft is flown in accordance with all of the following conditions. So, flown within a sterile area, meaning a cordoned off closed area of that uninvolved people are excluded from. And the aircraft is not flown at a height in excess of 160 feet or 50 meters from the service, in accordance with procedures specifically set out for the purpose of the event and in accordance with instruction from the race director, including any terminate race and land immediately instructions. Any observers are suitably briefed and aware of their responsibilities. So yeah, it looks like you need one observer per person. One observer for the race, sorry.
Yeah, one for the whole event. But it doesn't really help the guy that wants to get out of the park and when there's nobody there and flies mini quad amongst the trees miles from anywhere, it still makes it illegal.
Come on, only old men go to the parks and fly drones.
No, the young people do. Look at all the videos on YouTube. Every day there are thousands of FPV flights without spotters. I'm just lucky I've got Arnie. I've got a whole lot of Arnie stuff coming, and I'm lucky that he's always going to be there to get to watch my back.
What would work though is you could, if you've got a group of 5 or 6 mates, then you create your own little race club. Then you could do that every weekend. You could do this every weekend with just
Does it say that it has to be a person? Can't you have a dog as an observer?
Must be competent, I think, Louis. I think they use the word competence somewhere. But the thing is that what a lot of people like myself find FPV to be something that we like to do on our own. We don't want to drag people along. We want to go out and have a 5-minute flight, just get away from the problems of the day and whatever. And it's quite it's good for your mental health, and it's just a relaxing thing to do. And we've had every week there are many thousands of flights, and we don't see bodies littered in the parks, and so the risk is just not there.
So what's really interesting then, Bruce, I don't know if you've read any of the guidance. The BMFA have got a guidance document as well. I don't know if you've read it yet and looked at it. But what's really interesting, Bruce, they say that being able to see something visually, visual line of sight and being able to see it, means you can take better evasive action than if you were using the FPV camera to avoid buildings, vehicles and people. Now, by your face, you're already with me, right? Because we all know depth perception is useless beyond what? About 30, 50 meters? It's useless, right? That camera gives you far better idea of what you're not or are going to hit.
I think what's happening here is they're saying that we have so many manned aircraft crashing into each other that obviously actually being in the aircraft makes it difficult to judge distance and what you're going to hit. So you better to have people on the ground. It's much better. It's much safer. We should have all manned aircraft flown from the ground or have a spotter on the ground to tell them when they're going to crash into something. That's what they're saying.
Come on. What you guys need is a special vehicle to do FPV. Look at the Omni whatever copter that Peter developed. Come on, that's the perfect FPV machine. You can see everywhere.
You can actually fly without a spotter. Now, there's two scenarios that they're saying. So scenario one is that it must be within a sterile area.
Yes.
And closed off. Not flown over 50 meters.
Yes.
And in accordance with procedures specifically set out for the purpose of the event.
Yes.
So they are they're calling it an event. Okay. Yeah. But you can fly. And all it says for that is any observers are suitably briefed. But it doesn't say you must have them. It just says any observers.
But you have to have an event.
Yeah,
but you are having an event. Model aircraft may be flown by a remote pilot using first-person view equipment subject to the limitations of this authorization and following conditions A or B. And the conditions A are within a sterile area, cordoned off, closed, uninvolved persons that are excluded from. And it must not go over 50 meters.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in accordance with the procedure specifically set out for the purpose of the event.
It's pretty clear that it's designed for like quad racing or an organised event by a club or whatever, which is rather than someone just going somewhere into a sterile environment, you've still got to have an event, an organisation, and has to be cordoned off. So it's not something you could really reapply to someone just wanting to get into the park and have a nice, safe fly under the trees when there's nobody in the park.
But what's really good about Article 15 is when they brought in the flight restriction zones in the UK, there was a couple of model flying sites caught up in the middle of all that, and they literally, ATC could go, you're no longer flying. And with category 3, the open category that we now have, the A3, there are model flying clubs in built-up areas, and there are parks, and there are commons, and there are beaches you can fly on in the UK legally. And thankfully, Article 16 now allows you to continue doing that because it gives you 15...
Only if you're a member of the club. Remember, you have to be a member of the BMFA or FPV.
Yeah, there are specific things like you must be a member of an association, one of 4, as Ian said. You have to have a risk assessment. Okay.
Hang on. You have to have a risk assessment, but the regulator doesn't.
Yeah. Oh, it gets a little bit better. Yeah. So you have to have a risk assessment. You have to report certain things that happen. So an incident with manned aircraft, so when they fly low across the top of you, feel free to fill in air prox and everything. If you fly above 400 feet with your multirotor, you have to report it. If you fly beyond visual line of sight with your multirotor, you have to report it. If you hit anyone or anything, which would be normal, I would expect the Air Accident Investigation Board to be involved if it hits someone. But it will allow us to continue flying in these areas. Yes, there's a bit to do, but actually, it reminds me of a story. So I used to work in a big warehouse. We have a lot of Eastern European people in the company I worked at. When they first come to the UK, they were always worried about deportation. So they kept the documents on them or very close by, just in case. Okay, but now when you go flying your aircraft, it's almost like here now, it's become like that. If you don't have a printed copy of Article 16, if you don't have your BMFA card, if you don't have your operator ID, your flyer ID, if you don't have all these details with you, you could get slapped with a fine. It's getting crazy.
What's the phrase they used in World War II? Papers, please?
Yeah. And this is, I never thought of the UK of becoming like a police state. But all of a sudden, to fly your drone, you have to have all the paperwork.
Cameras everywhere didn't give you a hint.
Didn't you see Boris on the news last night?
Come on. I don't know why you guys in UK are so concerned with FPV and flying model aircraft. You guys are grounded for 6 weeks. That's what I heard on the news. So why are you guys worried?
It's true. Look, we've got a special guest, Peter, at zero notice. Zero notice has joined us because he has the Crazy Rapper's machine solved. That's how I should introduce it, isn't it? You've created a crazy flying machine, Peter. Are you allowed to show it to us again? Can we see it again? And maybe
good evening. Yeah, so this is it.
That's the perfect machine for the troublemaker to use. Come on.
Yeah.
So now that frame, you better unpack the whole story for those people that haven't seen or heard about this.
So there was a competition to make this shape fly in any direction and any orientation, and I entered, and I made it fly. A little bit of fiddling about and quite a lot of messing with code, but it flies.
And that's lovely. So what's the advantage?
I mean, it's really cool. I don't I don't know if I'm qualified to speak to the advantage of this for commercial operations, but it's really cool.
The advantage of having a vehicle that can fly in any direction and can sustain the position on any direction. Come on. Look at the FPV guys that always have to have the camera tilted on the drone.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably 6 degrees of freedom is maybe one too many, because arbitrary pitch and arbitrary roll is not that useful. But just one arbitrary pitch, like you say, you can fly level then, and you're more aerodynamic and things like that. But yeah, you can do 6 degrees of freedom if you want. 5 degrees of freedom is probably more useful.
So have you does this chap what was the name of the chap who put this competition up again?
So it's Terrance Howard of Iron Man 1 fame is where I have seen him.
That means nothing to me. I'm too old. I'm just another brick in the wall. You see, I'm just thrilled that I've discovered the green screen function of this evening. But does he know that you've solved this, and are you the first person to have solved this?
Yeah, so I've actually had a chat with him this afternoon, and I believe I'm the first person to solve this. So of course, it's been done with 8 motors rather than 6 in like a Vicom lab in I believe TU Delft have done it. They do all sorts of very cool stuff. But as far as I know, this is the first one with 6 motors and outside in the real world.
That's fantastic. Well, good for you. That is fantastic. And it's go on, Lee.
No, from what I've seen of Peter's work, he has part of the work done with Lua scripting running on Ardupilot. So it's even more astounding the possibilities that a small change on the Ardupilot code about 2 years ago managed to give us these days. So we get Lua scripting, and we can get those crazy contraptions flying. So now the sky's the limit.
Is there a video? Hello, Peter. By the way, we've spoke before, but we've not actually. Peter helped me out with some Lua scripting. Funny enough, have you got a video of this thing in flight?
I have got a video. Let me just find it.
I've not seen this.
He has to that he was flying inside the room. Come on, that video was
inside a room. Inside a room. That's going to be banned in Australia soon without correct permission.
Yeah.
They've just on the 21st of December, Australia passed a ruling talking about indoor flying. Their Civil Aviation Authority is now having a hand in that as well. They're considering it airspace. I kid you not. I kid you not.
Not navigable, but airspace.
Well, that was the point I made. I thought in the old world we used to say it's got to be navigable, but apparently not. So have you got the video, Peter? We'd love to see it. I can. If you should be able to share it.
I think I've posted it in the chat.
It's in the private chat, Gary.
Oh, all right. Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Right.
I'm new to all this.
No, so am I. Don't worry. This is everyone here knows how it works. Right. Let's get this one. Let's see if we won't have sound. That probably won't be a hardship. Right. So
does it have loiter, Pete? Does loiter work?
Of course. Of course.
But how have you handled compass? How have you handled compass?
It's Autopilot. You can even do missions with that.
Have I got the right thing coming up here? That doesn't look right. That's that screen there. That's not the right one.
Oh my God, we are watching all the porn from
I know. It'll be
pornography at any moment. It's going to happen.
It's very, very likely, isn't it? Just tell me if I put up a disappointing. That's it, isn't it? Right.
That looks like the one.
Here we go.
Here you go with the contraption flying. It's absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised how this video's got a huge number of views. This was my fooling about. This is a bit of a test, and it's gone a bit crazy.
I thought that it was
really cool.
mentioned in several.
Oh,
that is just mind-bending, isn't it? Look, just
wow.
Can you make sure Boston Dynamics don't get hold of this, please, Pete?
Oh, well,
Come on, it's open source. He shared the code. Come on.
I'm going to patent this.
Yeah, we've seen it on this channel. It must be our idea now. We must have done everything for this.
That is just crazy. That's bonkers.
I'm going to go back to that bit where it's rolling. This bit, I think, was the. Is this a bit where? Or have I not gone back far enough?
I think the good stuff's near the end.
Oh, is it? Oh, all right.
In my opinion.
So what are we going to call this? What version, Pete? Was it going to be? It's not going to be copter. Is it copt 3D? It's got to be 3D copter, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've been calling it a 6 degree of freedom Omnicopter, but the official name is a Lynchpin frame. So that's the official name they've given it. But the sort of
look at that.
It's freaking steady. It's incredibly steady.
No,
Ardupilot. What can I say?
I immediately thought about putting my 360 camera on that contraption. It would make some absolutely mind-boggling videos.
Totally, Louis. That is just bonkers.
How would it make you can do the roll with the video, so you just there's no benefit to having the craft rolling, is there?
No, I think at the moment it'll probably struggle with a camera. It's the center of gravity has to be quite near the center of the shape. But I think there's some. I've got some ideas to help improve it in the code and hopefully get a.
Can you put the whole thing on a gimbal?
Yes.
That's incredible, isn't it?
That is insane.
Just the way it went then as well, the way it shot off as it was rolling then, that's just...
I can see the UFO reportings coming in.
Yeah, that would be fun. Do a UAV disguise for it.
I was thinking seen in quite some time, and Peter, it's a wonderful work that you did over there. Even at this stage, it's fantastic.
Thank you. I think
to Louis, it's really good.
Thank you. Like I say, that was just a testing video. I think, or I hope there's a few. Won't be major improvements, but I think we can get it flying a little bit neater than it was in that video. I hope. I've got a few things on my list.
So is it ignoring the sensors that as it's rotating over, or is it just pulling everything into the EKFs and then balancing it all out that way?
It's all in the Kelvian. You just have to read the Kelvian.
I'm intrigued because it's rolling around. So you got the GPS is rolling in and out of view. You've got is compass used?
Yeah. So it's using compass. Yeah. So it's got the two compasses. It all just works. Like the DKF and everything, standard Ardupilot stuff is all the same. It's just really an attitude control and down the stack from there. Attitude control on a mixer. It's not as complicated as you would imagine. Like usually, if you think of a normal copter, it wants to go sideways, so you tilt the whole vehicle. On this copter, we don't have to tilt the vehicle. We can just tilt the thrust vector. So the vehicle stays level and we move the thrust vector. On Ford-off copters, to move the thrust vector, you have to tilt the vehicle. But now we can independently control the tilt and the thrust vector.
So just how many motors we got there again for those that are not? So there's 6 motors there, and they're arranged in 2 groups of 3. Okay, I see it. Yeah. Okay.
It's 6, Gary. That's one hand and another finger.
Hang on, let me count the bricks. 1, 2, 3.
And they're reversible propellers, so they're these 3D propellers. which is actually key to make the whole thing work. So if you watch that video, you'll see occasionally one of them will stop and go the other way.
Wow.
Witchcraft.
We're not worthy.
Aircraft.
No, I saw when Peter posted the link on the Ardupilot, and I went to see, and I went bananas with this. So that's why I told Gary to have you here, because it's I think it wins the Ian's news about the Mavic 3 or the Mavic 4 or whatever, because this is completely unexpected.
Well, cheerio then. How did this fellow come up with this idea? Why did he want to have this thing flying? I don't understand where the concept came from, really.
So he's got some idea of like tessellating these together. So you would fly, and because this is a shape where the propellers are inclusive, they don't stick out. Which actually was great for my testing, because bumping it into walls and whatever, it doesn't matter. You don't break a prop. Like I've got my curtains have got slices in from test flying normal copters, but this didn't slice up the curtains, which means you can fly them together and have them link up and assemble big shapes. So I think that's really what he has in mind, and actually bigger ones as well. I mean, just from the physics, this is about the ideal size. You can't go much bigger and still use reversing propellers, just because inertia means you can't reverse them quick enough. And you can't go much smaller and still fit all the gubbins you need in the middle. So this is about as the size you end up with to get one of these to fly. Bigger ones will need more motors probably. You'd have to have like a coaxial pair of motors or something like that.
Now, look, Drone Racer is sorry, Mark. Drone Racer said it. Is it money in the bank, or have you just done all this work now? I mean, it's gauche to ask, but have you won a huge prize?
So there is a prize.
Going to give you a pat on the back and send you on the way?
There's some prize money, but the competition deadline is the end of February, I think. So I think there's a few other entries, a couple of dozen other entries, and I believe mine's the first, but there might be other people working on some secret squirrel stuff that'll pop up in the future.
So how do they decide the winner, Pete? Say there's 3 of you who all achieve the goal. What's the difference? Where's the point they pick the winner? What they prefer? What they think's more ingenious? No.
Hopefully the one that flies best. I mean, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
Can I just say, right? You have just come up with an aircraft that I could see that could probably better the Helios inside for inspection work. There's often, if the Helios is like a 20k bit of kit. That, Pete, is fantastic. Yeah.
Well, I like that.
That is, I mean, I haven't got the chat up for YouTube, but that is, my takeaway is that airframe, if you can build that airframe out of carbon fiber, right, and put a camera on it, you just made it.
That's why I'm saying just put a 360 camera in it, and then you just point the camera wherever you want to.
It's astounding. That is fantastic. I love it. It's brilliant. Black magic and all that, but a bit of voodoo in there maybe, but
Any bit of code. It's not as scary as it sounds.
Oh, I think you've shut us all up.
So how many motors did that thing have? My internet crapped out just as you were counting.
It's a question you can't ask, Nicola, because Bruce will make a snide remark about it being 6.
6. Not bad. Very neat machine.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Peter, you custom changed the code, or?
Yeah, custom code.
Nice. Very nice.
When will it be on Banggood?
Yesterday. It'll be on Banggood yesterday.
I'd give it a few months.
There is one thing, Pete. I would protect that code to a degree for some time if I was you. It might sound a bit selfish.
It's on GitHub. It's open source. You're too late.
I already got it on the desktop. It's in front of me.
Well, yeah, but it's okay because we've had it on this show, so therefore it's our invention now, because that's the way this industry works. As soon as you see somebody else do something, you claim it for yourself. I hereby claim that invention. And who the hell's this Peter bloke anyway? Who's this bloke that's turned up?
So if anybody wants to build one of these, how would he go about obtaining that code?
It's on GitHub.
Can you guys let him speak, please?
No, just read the fine manual. It's everything written. You just build the frame and slap some motors in it and flash it with Ardupilot. Done.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to do a build series and release the 3D print files and that sort of thing. I'll have to see what happens over the course of this competition. See if I'm allowed.
Okay, so you build that for some competition?
Yeah, so somebody offered some prize to make this shape fly.
Okay.
So I thought I would try.
Well done then.
Thank you.
So the triangular piece in there, it is FX Node. It's already on GitHub. The triangular piece in there, that's just to mount everything on there.
That's right.
Have you flown it in any wind with that?
Not a huge amount of wind yet. I mean, it will, because it has enough thrust to hover in any orientation. It's quite, it moves pretty quickly, and it's disconcerting because you expect a copter to tilt and then move, and it just goes. I mean, maybe I've got a bit used to it, but it's still a bit weird.
I might be mistaken, but didn't you do a real flight sim with that shape?
Yeah, so my first step was to simulate it in real flight rather than building a real one and crashing it constantly. Much quicker to crash constantly in a simulator. So yeah, that was the first step. Make sure it is possible before you start building one.
So Gary,
well, theoretically. That thing is impossible to crash unless you floor it.
Give it to Bruce. Give it to Bruce. It'll be all right.
because you can't really overdo a command to make it tilt and lose its balance. Wherever you rotate it, it's still just hovering in one spot. How do you crash that thing?
Oh, come on, Nicola. With you always have to carry the black bag to the field. So don't worry, you can crash it.
Just need to find a mountain, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Got one close by. Okay, but seriously, how do you crash it?
I mean, you can. I mean, it's possible. Like you could try in that video at the end. It's rotating pretty fast. It does get a bit wobbly if you go too fast. I suspect the most likely way you would crash it is you would lose orientation and get very confused, because that has happened to me several times.
Okay, but when you're moving forward and it's rotating in some direction, are you actually doing are you compensating the forward movement for the rotation, or is that done by the autopilot? You just push forward and rotate whichever way you want.
So you just push forward and rotate. So it flies essentially like a normal copter, and then I have the Lua scripts on the flight controller doing the roll and pitch. So I fly it round as if it were a normal copter, and then it just changes its roll and pitch to basically look impressive. And I try and try and understand what angle it is at to not shoot off to the next field.
All right, cool.
But are we not a step closer then? If you thinking you don't need to do all that super duper rolling and all that sort of stuff, to the idea where people always said you'll end up with a machine that you just point somewhere and it'll go and it'll work out how to get there, and this will be more able to do that in the inspection use case. I'm not sure if I'm putting that very well, but a few years ago that's what people suggested, is we just point at the bit of the sky we needed it to go to and there it will go. Surely that's where this is going.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, it has advantages in that you can move in 6 degrees of freedom, but I mean, there are disadvantages. You've got 2 extra motors. You could build a quad. lose 2 motors. It's not fantastically efficient, as you can imagine. A bit of extra weight, things like that. So I don't know if it's going to necessarily compete with a quadcopter with a gimbal on, but it's another option. It's another option for different applications.
What is the actual flight time then? What sort of times are you getting?
So it can go about 5 minutes if you're not going too much. But I had it rotating really fast and flying in a circle, and it did about 1.5 minutes.
Come on, guys! You just saw the first flight of a beta or a half a prototype. Come on,
payload. What payload?
Let me be perfectly clear, right? That is so impressive. Okay, to do that, right? It boggles my mind to a degree, because I get what it's, how it's trying to do it, and my brain's just going, no, I can't quite get what I'm seeing there, because as it rotates and it does everything, it's not like it does any sudden drop in any attitude it's doing. It's just, it doesn't.
Were you still in Wales, Peter, when you were building this?
So this is actually filmed back in England. I went.
Came it for Rome.
But the indoors flight was definitely in Wales.
Yes, it's a Welsh product,
and it's coming to you live from Wales now.
You're back in the motherland.
Yeah, it's been stolen.
Yeah.
It's been stolen by the Welsh. They've stolen it. It's been taken over the border. My life.
It's not that far away from me. Unfortunately, if it wasn't for COVID, we'd have probably had a coffee by now. We never made that happen, unfortunately, Pete.
Yeah, hopefully in the summer we can come and fly with this.
It's mind-numbing, Pete. Very, very, very well done indeed. And of course to the whole Ardupilot team, because it's the work of many, many people as well as your cleverness on there. I'm sorry, I didn't put that very well, but sorry.
I mean, you're right.
Sorry.
I added 500 lines to what is already a massive code. I added a tiny bit on top.
Come on, and now Peter, say how many parameters did you need to add, because Ian likes many parameters.
No parameters, just a Lua script.
That's astounding, isn't it? And which autopilot have you got on there?
Oh, so it's a Cube Orange.
Cube Orange.
I thought we'd show off, but of course you could fly this with, Maytech boards, things like that. There's no. I thought I would because I could, but there's no requirement that it be such a high quality flight controller.
So
surprised.
Would. Oh, sorry. Ian, do you want to?
No, I was just going to say I'm surprised Philip hasn't been shouting that one from the rooftop.
Well, just to be honest, I wasn't expecting it to go so mad. Like I was still, I would have done a nicer video.
Oh, shame, man. Oh, well, no. If you do a build video on this, you'd rule YouTube in our world. You definitely would.
Yeah. So, Peter, can it use GPS at all, or is it all ATI flying?
No, that's GPS. So it's in loiter in a bit in that video. It flies further better in loiter than I can fly it manually. So auto missions after
it can. So I would assume the GPS, if it's upside down, it doesn't like it.
It's not great, but there's GPS on the bottom and there's GPS on the top.
That'll do it. And how slowly can you rotate it?
As slow as you like. It actually gets quite a bit smoother if you go slowly.
I see a massive potential for that airframe. You have something, that airframe in your code, inspection work, I see you've got such potential there. There's nothing I've seen much better around. If you can just get the batteries up, if you can get a 10-minute flight out of it, okay, I think you've got a massive winner there. It is phenomenal. It really is.
I'll see what I can do.
If you can maintain an attitude and have it controlled, that's the biggest, the most impressive thing. Not the tumbling around and all that. That's only for the show off. But the possibility of maintaining an attitude. You can get away with. You can throw away all the gimbals.
You could, yes, you're right, Louis. Brilliant. So, Peter, the next question for you then is, so taking Louis' comments, right, could you just have a switch on the transmitter where you've got it in a certain attitude, and you just flick a switch, and it will hold that attitude no matter what?
Yep. Yeah, we can do that. No problem.
Come on. You want to go a step further? You want to go a step further? I'll give you a step further. You just tell the drone that you want the camera level with something, and then you reading the image and tell the flight controller, all right, stop. That's the better thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of the disadvantage of using this instead of a gimbal is that this is a big thing. So a little puff of wind or whatever will knock it. Whereas a gimbal is quite isolated from the wind and that sort of thing.
Don't worry, Peter. We can make the camera work on that.
And don't forget, Peter, that if you're doing internal inspections, if you send it down into a ship hold, for example, to do something, you don't have to worry about the gimbal. There's no wind down there. You know, it will be. It should be all right in theory. I mean, it's yeah, I'm just not worthy. I'm going now. Bye.
Oh, you did?
Yes,
You did. Well, that's my phone. And then it can never be efficient because not all motors are providing lift. Some are just dead weight idling. Well, same as yes, true.
Yeah.
Well, you know, with all airframes, there's a bit of inefficiency somewhere. Nothing is perfect, okay? There's no perfect airframe as such. Everything has its plus and minus. Depending what you're carrying and what you're doing, you have to make a little sacrifice somewhere. And if you're going to sacrifice a bit of inefficiency and it doesn't impact your operation as such, does it really matter?
Yeah. It's a matter of balancing all the factors. For instance, I'm sure that Peter will agree with me that the frame can be made lighter and more resilient than that frame. You can get specially purposed propellers. You can go crazy all around.
It's important to remember this is the first one that's flown in the world. So we are day one, hour one, minute one, second one. There are many, many, many things that can happen. But what I want to know, what the troublemaker, Bruce. Well, now that Peter's passed his interview and is part of our company, how are we going to squeeze the money out of him? Where do you see this going, Bruce?
By the way,
as I say, carry on, Louis.
Bruce, no, just one question. How do you classify this drone? How do you going to classify this drone?
It's a multi-rotor.
It's a hex.
It's just a multi-rotor. It's got more than one rotor. That's all you need to know.
Okay. So it's a C1, C2, or C3, something like that.
Oh,
right?
we're not having any EU rubbish. It's an RC craft. That's it. Safe as safest houses. None of this rule stuff.
But where do you see? I mean, obviously you're our go-to grown-up. So where do you see it going?
It's got a lot of potential, obviously, because it's a rotation independent 6 degrees of freedom. So you don't have to change your attitude to change your direction, which is incredibly useful in many cases. And as others have said, it sort of circumvents the need for a gimbal in a lot of applications, which makes things simpler. So what you're losing by having motors going along that are just idling, you're gaining because you don't have the weight and complexity of a gimbal, which is, I'd say, small differences, but motors are small and light. So I think it is going to be, it potentially be something specialist. It won't replace quadcopters or multi-rotors and other types of things, but it has specialist niche applications. So there is definitely a commercial potential there for it. And I'm pretty sure someone will pick it up and run with it. And Peter won't get a penny.
And that would be criminal. You know, I mean, it is one of those things. You know, it's going to be an open source flight controller. The code's going to get out. But yeah, Peter, you need to. There's got to be something that can be done there. But
as we know, it's how you package it and deliver it. It's the solution that matters, because quadcopters were around a long time before DJI, but DJI make the money because they've done the right job of actually turning it into a turnkey product. And that's where the money lies, making an idea into a commercially viable product. So there's still potential for people, Peter, if you want to get sorted out and do that, to do that. And also, you can't license it, but you can act as a consultant and get a clip on the ticket for companies not starting up to use the technology. There's ways you can do it, but because it's been part of a competition, I dare say the competition rules claim some of the IP as well, do they, Peter?
They do, yeah, but it's allowed to be based on open source code. So I've released the code as open source before the deadline of the competition.
Good man. Good man. Well done. 1 million points. And we need to make special note of. Look! Just in time, a barrister's arrived.
Oh my God!
We've got our legal. There we are.
I don't talk to him.
Don't talk to him. All right. We'll get rid of him then. Yeah. All right. We'll get rid of him then. Yes. Well, actually, Richard Ryan would be your man to talk to, Peter, if there should be any kind of legal issues. He's UK based. Scotland, that's UK, I think, isn't it? Unless they've dug a trench and moved it away yet.
I think until next week, Scotland is still UK.
Until next week. Just when Wales gets to push itself off as well, I'm sure. Wish the West Country would. Amazing stuff. Please stay with us because I'm sure we're going to, if you have time, it's very good of you also just to turn up out of the blue. As I'm sure more questions will come along.
That's right. I'm happy to hang out.
Excellent. Let us move ourselves on to, where should we go next? Shall we go to
Mavic 3?
Go on, Louis, say again.
Mavic 3, like Ian wants to have a new Mavic.
No Mavics. Let's talk about this shambles of remote ID.
Let's talk about the savior of the hobby. This guy, he's patented remote ID. The AMA can go along, buy that patent, and suddenly remote ID is no longer going to be a thing. We can't use it. You'll have to drop the whole concept. So the hobby as a whole needs to buy this patent, exclusive rights to it, and then say to the FAA in the USA, you can't use it, I'm sorry. And then the whole remote ID thing goes away.
That's all right. Okay, glad we sorted that one out. Sorry, I said you were the go-to grown up. That's that done then. Right, what should we talk about next? Well, should you be able to go to all the meetings and then patent something based on meetings you've been to, or does that mean you did very well because you went to the meetings and did exactly that?
Were they paid for those meetings? Because there is a thing in US law that says if the government has funded a development of something, then they have a right to take that intellectual property with compensation without challenge. So if they've funded a project and you've developed IP, they can take your IP. They're going to pay you for it, but they can take it and for a fair value, which I guess they get to set. So you can't say, no, you can't use my patent. They can say, we're using that. Thank you very much. Here's $2.50 to cover your costs and do it. But there has to be a degree of funding from the government involved. So did he get paid a stipend or anything for attending those meetings? If so, he might not be in the strong position he thinks he is. But also remember, patents are just a license to sue, just a right to sue. And there's so much prior art that patent won't stand up in the courts.
What's concerning with this is I don't know the guy, but I know a few people who do, and allegedly he's a good guy. So the person who's done this patent isn't it's not someone who's an out and out patent troll. My understanding is he's actually a good person, but I don't know him myself. I don't know the full ins and outs, but he's been involved in the rulemaking committee for quite some time, and the patent was put in before the current legislation went through. But this is a person who has advised government, as I understand it, on the recommended course of action directly for remote ID, and then has patented that concept, which has then gone on to become legislation. Now, it's hard not to think this stinks. Not being nasty for the person, but you advise a government to do something whilst you're sitting there waiting for a patent to go through, which means you're going to financially benefit from it. Now, I don't care about the large manufacturers, DJI, Autel, Skydio, they can afford it. What this will hurt is the remote ID standalone devices. The BOM on them at the moment can be as low as $15 without any patents. We'll have open source software. Philip, everyone's looking at it. We're talking basically a flight controller with a GPS. That is all it needs to be at most. If there's a patent which is going to involve licensing, that it could potentially drastically increase the cost users are going to have to pay for compliance for retrofit. I don't care about ready to fly. The big companies can pay it. But this is the effect on the everyday guy where a $30 device was potentially going to be available. What if he wants $30? If he's going to charge companies $5, by the time that hits the user, that's going to be $20. Let's be honest, by the time the companies have to do the paperwork and handle it. So it smells very off to me.
Of course we're going to get shafted. Did you expect anything else?
Well,
true.
Okay. Well done, Nicholas. Okay, would this patent be enforceable? Because I'm not a big person on patent law. Would this be enforceable globally, or would this only be in the US? Would this be enforceable? It's a US patent, so
it's that prior art thing, isn't it?
No, it depends if he has registered it worldwide or not. It's just a matter of paying the necessary paperwork all around the world to make it global.
Yeah, but as I say, a patent only gives you the right to sue. It doesn't actually automatically entitle you to get damages or anything. It just says that you can sue and say you've claimed it. But the thing is, in the US, there's a thing called the Bayh-Dole Act, which was specifically passed by the US government to give them the right to basically acquire IP that they partially funded. And that's the thing they could use. But also the other thing is, how does this remote ID differ from ADSB? The concepts are exactly the same. The amount of data transferred is different format, but still effectively ADSB, that's prior art. That's been around for so long. There's so many other instances of this prior art that a patent like that is going to be very difficult to enforce. The courts also take a very dim view of people that have obviously been a bit cunning in the way they've gone about organising patents. If he's been doing this whilst advising the government, I suspect any court that was asked to enforce his patent would look at that and go, yeah, we're not too happy with that. And they would not lean favourably towards his case.
If you look at it, it is a loose patent. And look, if we look at what's been kicked out in the past, it's not going to be hard to see this getting kicked out. So it could just be, I got my name on a piece of paper for remote ID, and it could just be a game of that. But I don't know. When I first saw the story, I read it, and within like the first couple of paragraphs, you start thinking, hold on a minute, how could this even been allowed to have happened? Someone just mentioned about the FAA. FAA doesn't require certification for remote ID. It's self-certification. Manufacturers only have to provide how they're going to comply, not individual compliance on each aircraft. So it can simply be a documentation of conformity, just like within the EU.
It's a bag of worms, isn't it? And it's going to continue to be. But thank goodness it's going to make the sky so very much safer.
If it can halve the toll, of deaths related to the recreational use of multi-rotor drones, it's all going to be worthwhile.
Oh, hello. Rich is talking about IP rights. It's not always easy and can be technical. Dare I pull him in?
That's why we have lawyers called Sue.
It was just one of those things where you read it and just went, so he advised the government to put it through. This is what he advised, and he's patented it. Nice game. But
could this just be a cunning ploy? If he's a nice guy, maybe he's doing this so that they can't bring remote ID and he wants to stop them doing it. And he's going to say, right, that's fine. But the thing that worries me is you notice in that final rule document, the use of the phrase at this time, it is littered through that entire document. It's at this time. And the moment the infrastructure or the technology is there to support this network ID, they're going to roll it out straight away. And how far away is it? Elon Musk's Starlink, for example, that's the technology. It's ubiquitous. You have complete coverage of the USA. And I'm expecting that before the final rules actually brought into thing, the network component will be added back in again.
Yeah, well, no one else is jumping in. I was just, I was
it's right. It is coming. UK added it in. The EU, America took it out because they didn't think they could do it right now. UTM is inevitable in Europe, the UK, and the USA. There are countries where it won't happen, Nicola, places like that. But the UK, especially, and the USA, at some point, we will be in full UTM, and you won't be able to fly without registering a flight. It's inevitable.
You won't be able to fly legally. without registry.
Legally, yes. It doesn't apply to Nicola, any of it, any.
Oh, come on, let's face it. People will be flying off the books even then.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Let's not kid ourselves.
Flying without a spotter is illegal now, and it happens all the time. If the rules, if people don't see a good reason for the rules, they'll ignore the rules. And the regulators have fallen down on the most important thing, justifying the removal of freedoms. They haven't justified it in any way, shape or form, with any facts, with any evidence, with any risk assessments. So it's only natural that compliance is going to be very poor, because people don't, but if they can't see the reason for it, they're just not going to do it. It's like smoking marijuana. People around the world have been smoking it, even though it's been illegal, because they realize, well, what's the point? No one's dying from marijuana smoking. And so we're not going to bother with stupid rules. And that's what they've done. They have discredited themselves by not backing up their claims with evidence.
It is
Speaking
possible.
on legal, sorry, Ian. How is the situation over there, Nicola?
Well,
starting January 1st.
Very, very little to no change at this moment. Somebody shared on some of our groups recently a new website that they've put up, which looked absolutely ridiculous, like a 5-year-old made it. So yeah, I think we're gonna have officially rules and whatnot, but as to the enforcement of those rules and, you know, anybody really caring about them, I don't think we're gonna see that anytime soon. But funny thing was, ever since the new year started, I've been busy really strictly adhering to the rules and the altitude limits and all of that, you know, as every time. And I published you know, a relaxing video the other day. There was this one guy who went, well, you know, it's a nice video, cool and all, but, you know, it's flights like that that are keeping my son from flying with his toy in the park. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I'm not in the US. Second of all, it's not flights like this or, you know, similar flights by any other people. It's something else. It's financial interest that's preventing your son from flying his toy in the park, and not flights like this, because, you know, we have yet to see an incident, like a serious incident or a death from flights like this. And in the meantime, while we've been bombarded with that shit, how many non-drone related airplane incidents have there been in the past 2 years alone?
A terrible amount, and there's been some really awful ones in the last week. Some properly horrible accidents. And sorry to steal your thunder a little bit, Nicola, but we must greet Richard now. The law's here, so everybody must now officially behave. Regardless of what we said about him earlier, we must not say it anymore. Evening to you, Richard. Do you have something compelling to add, I feel?
Good evening, sir. I think, I mean, there are a number of issues that you guys have touched on as always, and always very interesting and very exciting to discuss. And I would not want to bore the audience any more than is necessary.
Or they already have been, is what he's saying.
Yes, exactly.
But I think, you know, the intellectual property piece on what Ian was saying, it's going to be incredibly important, and to understand that and how it impacts upon other people that are looking at remote ID is going to be incredibly essential. Because if this chap is intending to license it or indeed enforce his patent, then that could have consequences for different organizations that want to use remote ID and obviously install it in a way that's CE compliant when we look at the EASA regulations. And I think that there is potentially an impact there, which may add, to Ian's point, which may add to cost. And that we just don't know about at the moment. But there are ways around patents. And they, as I said, they can be very technical in nature, but one has to really dig deep into the detail to understand what sits within the patent. And quite often within a patent, you won't see any know-how. Sometimes there can be an inference to know-how, and that's quite key. and that could be a way of deciphering how to separate what's registered within the patent to what somebody else is doing or indeed has manufactured. So there's quite a few moving parts to that piece, and I would certainly be interested to know how this chap intends to enforce his patent rights going forward.
It's interesting because, you know, if anyone follows the computer industry, to give you an idea of a patent that caused havoc, there's a patent on all-in-one coolers for computers that the pump is on the end of the two hoses, and one of the companies who manufacture it has the patent and everyone else has to pay them, and the only other way around it is they have to move the pump to another part of the circuit. And something like 95% of all all-in-one coolers with water follow that patent, and it was something that caused absolute havoc when it was first enforced, because everyone either had to find a way around it, some companies had to stop manufacturing. So it's interesting, these patents, which are quite wide, you know, that it's not a very you know, this is a pump on the end of two hoses. That's how loose the patent was, but in that application, that company got it patented. And that's
the other, I think, Ian, as well, the other important aspect here is where are the jurisdictions that the patent is registered in? Because if it is US, then it's just US. Yes, you might be able to enforce your patents elsewhere in other jurisdictions, but you try and enforce your patent rights in China, good luck.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a little bit bewildered. There must be many by patents all around, because especially things that come out of America, dare I say it, because there tends to be an awful lot of prior art. I mean, one can argue that the first helicopter was that de Beausiat thing in 1907, so no one could ever claim four propellers in a square as original. But surely that water pump, surely there must be loads of other water pumps. What suddenly makes that patentable? That are pumps, that it's in a computer.
In a computer, and that's what changes it. Yeah, and that, you know, it was used as part of the processor cooling unit, and that's what made it absolutely patentable. And literally,
well, it's part of the design.
And all of the manufacturers either have to pay them the patent, or one or two of them now moved the pump into the middle of the radiator, which was a complete mess. But it's fairly well known, and it just shows how quite a minor patent can have a massive effect, and it literally stopped everyone.
Sorry, Ian. I was trying to be broadcastery then, and it didn't work very well. But it does actually lead us on to the next story, because there is a company that's protected its patent that it's had for the V shape of multi-rotor fiercely, and that's why you don't see them everywhere. And that was Ascending Technologies, Aztec, who I believe somebody told me earlier that they have been sued. In fact, let's put the link in here. Who wants to pick this one up? Go on, Mark. This was your story.
Well, I spotted it in my newsfeed, and I thought it was quite interesting, because Intel's been accused by a reseller of breaking promises, shipping the subpar, enterprise-friendly Falcon 8 drones. And let's face it, you know, Intel said it could fly for 16 minutes. I've never heard of a Falcon 8 making a 16-minute flight in a month of Sundays. Has anyone else ever heard of it being able to fly for that long?
No. Well,
the first time I'm hearing it exists. So
no. Well, it depends on the size of the minutes. If you get very short minutes, you get 15 minutes.
Who said size doesn't matter?
Very fair point. Very fair point. And was that minutes at the equator or minutes at the poles? I mean, there are places where minutes do change very, very suddenly. A minute on Mars or whichever. But anyway, yes.
But what's really interesting, they're being sued for a comedy of errors amongst it all. So it's from the graphical user interface problems they had with it. It's from the batteries being a fire risk. You know, all these things, and there's a reseller, and they are suing them for not providing kit that should work correctly as described.
Buyer's remorse, isn't it? A little bit. I mean, we've all known, we've all been around a long time. For those of us other than Nicola who hasn't managed to have one of those fly, at least a fly away with one of these wouldn't be very far away, Nicola. If you've been around long enough, you know they don't fly very long. And they had the advantage, which has been taken over by Skydio now. But first of all, it was the Parrot Anafi with the ability to look up. That was a big advantage it had in the inspection role that nobody else had. That was where the V-shaped airframe helped with that very much. Made it possible. And I had a chance to fly one many years ago now, years and years ago, back when. So when they first came out, the idea of flying for 6 to 10 minutes that was okay because everybody was flying for 6 to 10 minutes. But here in 2021, that ain't the case. So I'm very surprised that reseller is feigning shock and suing them.
It is bizarre. I mean, I've never flown the Falcon 8. I've seen one. I've had one on the desk in front of me, but I've never actually taken it out for a spin. But then I've always been aware of its limitations. I've always known that should they go take it outside and fly, I've known 8 minutes and that's it. You know, and that's if you're good.
There we are. Einar's got it, that time changes more by altitude than by location. So obviously, if you're flying on top of Everest, then obviously it can probably do the time or whatever. David Walters ranks he's flying it for 18 minutes.
Oh,
yeah, Mr. Walters. I bet.
Can't believe him.
No, I wouldn't believe him either. I wouldn't believe a word he says.
I think somebody's manipulated the batteries on that one.
No. If you don't have a payload, it is viable to fly it. But then, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. All right, well, that almost, if I'd thought about it and I had some sort of broadcaster's head, well, then I'd use the word parrot. So then I'd say I'd bring in parrot now and say, did we see the piece today about the ANAFIs are still going to keep complying with EU regs? And I think it was the first time, unless someone else has seen it, that I've seen a mock-up of the EU mark.
Where is this? I haven't seen this because there's more to this than meets the eye. Now, DJI have released all documentation of conformity for all of their aircraft, and a large number of them comply with all elements of the new EASA regulation now. However, because they can't be retrospectively type certified for type C1, C2, C3, C4, they won't be classed. However, they technically meet all of the required standards.
Well, if only you read some sort of daily internet-based news service for drone enthusiasts, then you might have seen a story that I've put in the link. And I realise that you're a busy man driving everywhere in Wales at the moment, or the UK, so you plainly don't have the time.
I haven't had a bit.
Yeah, no, there it is. Oh, Kevin's here. Oh, here's the X-Man. Oh, now we're in trouble. The man from Intel's arrived. Good evening to you, Kevin. X of Intel. I can't remember your exact. Perhaps you'd be so kind as to put your times there. So, how many minutes then for the Falcon 8 to avoid a legal case, Kevin? Over to you. Over in the comments. Wonder if he's probably gone now, isn't he? Anyway, Kevin, X of Intel, there he is. Yeah, so that's CE mark. Do we think that's how it's going to look? And what do you think the backstory of that is then, Ian?
It's nonsense. It's nonsense.
Okay.
It's exactly. They're basically saying it can fly as per every aircraft can fly. So it can fly in the transitional category, and then it moves over to the other during the transitional part. Yeah. Let me reread this, but to me, they're just stating what affects everybody, and they're probably just trying to make themselves look good. But hold.
It also could be that because we're now going or moving to a risk-based approach and moving the risk assessment from the pilot to the manufacturer, that the CE part is becoming quite important. So it's obviously in the interest of any manufacturer to say that they comply with the CE guidelines that are stipulated by the EU. Because if they don't, then they're out of business. It's really important that they have that stamp in place, because not only does it sell drones, but it also talks about how they've met the standards set by the EU with respect to the CE marking, because they need to move that risk from the operator to the manufacturer. I think that's going to be quite important. So if any drone company comes out and says that they can do that from now, then they're certainly trying to gain market advantage, is my view. But how they actually do it is going to be quite interesting.
They're saying exactly the same as DJI. Exactly the same. Technically, we are convinced that all of our Anafi models meet the requirements of the C1 class system. So they believe they meet it. And what they're saying is, and this is an interesting bit because we've said this before, all our models already contain a CE mark. So what they're saying is, we've got a CE mark. Do we need another one? But when you go further down, basically it says, if I already have an aircraft in my possession, will it be possible to obtain the identification class retrospectively? This eventuality is currently being studied by the European authorities. So it's exactly the same situation.
I think we're talking about two different things there, Ian. It's a CE mark in relation to the product as it's sold in the EU today, and it's a CE mark in relation to how it meets the new risk assessments going forward.
And actually, they're actually being deceptive there, because they're saying our aircraft has a CE mark already. So they're actually trying to introduce a level of confusion into users to say, oh, look, we've got a CE mark. If you think it, we believe it complies, carry on.
Allegedly.
It complies with what?
Allegedly.
Yeah. That CE mark has to comply with something. What does it comply with is the $1 million question.
Well, interestingly, so this is still true unless it's changed in the past month or so. There's no way at the minute that everyone knows the exact specifications of the C2, C1 rated aircraft specs, because it's state certain things like propeller impact or minimum damage and all that kind of stuff. These things, we've got minimum slow speed mode is defined, if you like, no faster than X, but there's still things. And the DFT right now, because the UK, of course, I'm afraid we're no longer in the EU project. We basically are. There's no actual system in place in the UK. So who knows what's going to happen? For the UK, it'll be different to the EU anyway, I suspect.
Yeah, they've probably got access to the documentation in the EU, which is the preliminary. So they've probably all seen where the intended regulation is going to fall. So that's what they're all basing it off. But you know what? I didn't read that. That's quite deceptive.
Not sure. Well, thank goodness we've got legal representation here. I'm not sure you should be saying things like that, Ian. But anyway, just call me a coward then, generally.
My lawyer says I have to say, under no circumstances am I saying that Parrot or any of its things are trying to deceive users. However,
I'm not sure however works either, but Richard would know.
In my honest opinion is the phrase you should use.
So, Richard, you've got to query us for a second. You could always make yourself a little C2 mark sticker, stick it on the drone. No one would know the difference.
Did we see that fellow? Now, I should have put the link because I can't even remember his name. That YouTuber who got the police came and knocked on his door because he was near an airfield in the UK and said at his scrapyard, oh, this is a terrible link because I haven't got the video in front of me and I can't think of the name of the person. But anyway, knocked on the door. And when they knocked on the door in his yard, they said, you have flown this thing 31 times from this location. And people have jumped up and down and suggested it's Heathrow. It probably was because it's probably where that scrapyard is. And they mentioned the Thales radar system. And I thought straight away, no, that wasn't the Thales thing. That was Aeroscope. Pick that up. But yeah, so he's within 5. Then the police said you're within 5 miles of an airfield. You will not fly. And you have been spotted 31 times. And the bloke says in the video, he says, well, what, even if I turned it on in the office? They said, yep, And if you turned it on the office, you shall not do that. And then what was the next? Where was I going to take that next? Oh, as we've discussed before, they said, well, what's going to happen is we've come and told you, and our drone unit is going to come around and have a chat with you. So I think we said, was it last week or the week before, where we said the drone units are going to get collared with a lot of work? That's exactly what's going to happen.
Didn't I say that, Gary?
You did last week, the week before, whenever it was. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is now, quickly ditch all your DJI stuff so you can't be seen on an aeroscope. Get a parrot and naffy. Everyone buy parrot and naffies.
Oh, look, Kevin's playing that even ex-employees aren't able to comment on legal proceedings. Oh, Kevin. Mind you're doing a lot better than Ian is at the minute.
In all fairness to Kevin, I'm sure he may, I don't know for certain, may have some form of confidentiality provision within his agreement.
I think it does. And you can tell that you're the barrister and we're not. Yeah, so I should try and find that. Talk amongst yourselves for a couple of minutes. I should try and find that video, shouldn't I? That was a really bad
video isn't recorded or going out live, and I think
no one watches it anyway, so it's fine. Yeah.
What would be interesting? So it's really interesting. So the DJI stuff stands out like a bit of a sore thumb, like on the Aeroscope and a lot of systems, right? Now, technically, DJI stuff stands out like a sore thumb. So all those people that think they need to put FCC mode to fly further, all they're doing is making their thumb even bigger. They're giving out a massive signal. What's really interesting is the Parrot and Naffy is a peg for detection systems because it's Wi-Fi. And it's very hard for a detection system to see it. There are some that can, don't get me wrong, but actually it's a little peg. So I'm not, if you want to avoid an Aeroscope system, just buy a Parrot.
Well, the name's in the manufacturer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think remote ID might actually help us all thinking about this, because the more people who fly, everyone's going to get used to seeing drones and they're not going to care. Part of the problem is now you're getting harassed, or I seem to get harassed. Police called on me, jumped on out of hedges, because they are not the norm. They have all happened even in the last 3 months, but they are not the norm. Whereas, if we do get this mass take up and everyone's got remote ID and they're all transmitting, no one will care. No one. It's like anything, isn't it? Once it becomes the norm, people will stop whinging about it. I think the problem is at the moment we are.
But will it ever be the norm? There's just not enough drones and flyers out there to make it the norm, is there? I mean, people can fly here if they want to, but you never see drones flying. People use them on holiday. They use them now and then. They use them to keep the back of the wardrobe covered. But in most cases, that's all people use them for.
Yeah, but once Peter's drone is modified with laser sensing and weapons, it will be the COVID robot that will be hunting us all down and keeping us in our homes. It is the reality of the future. Once Atlas is running the streets, keeping us all inside, and Peter's robots, it is. Peter's looks like those things you see in Guardians of the Galaxy. You had those machine gun robots that came over and hovered. Peter's creating.
Yeah, the next Doctor Who Christmas special. Just watch for it there.
I did notice they were mentioning drones in the Doctor Who Christmas special adverts, which annoyed me a lot. Yeah. Maybe you've talked about this already. So the Daleks are now referred to as drones.
What's he trying to show it?
I'm not sure.
Photo, video, aerial. Just while we're here, can you? There's my email address is up on the screen. Can you email it to me? Because unfortunately, it won't let me see the links in here. I am busy looking for it. You may resume your normal programming, dear others. Photo, video, aerial. Very cleverly or kindly, is going to send the video link.
So Richard,
Louis was just sharing his Pornhub login details with us.
No. It's the Parrot app that. You can already enable remote ID.
Yeah.
So I've got a question then for Richard about remote ID. So a lot of companies in the UK do data collection. Let's say I go out to do a job and I'm doing data collection, right? I have to have a remote ID, but I don't want my competition to know how I get the data, because it is part of, the USP. It's part of that important thing. Do you think there's anything there when the CIA goes, you've got to be able to transmit your data? It's going to be very interesting when, companies go, well, hang on a minute, because all I'm going to do, if I want to know how someone's getting data, I could literally just get a Wi-Fi sniffer like a Pi. I know someone's doing some jobs, and I can go and see how they're doing it.
Just a quick question for Richard. Does UK is compliant with GDPR?
Yeah, we are compliant with GDPR.
So that's no problem. You just have to, under GDPR, you have to ask the people that collected that information to erase it, and they have to.
I'm a mean company. I won't do it. I'm called Google.
Yeah, well, that's to a person, isn't it, Louis? The right to be forgotten relates to a person. If you're recording data that is from a drone job, unless you can identify somebody, would GDPR necessarily apply? What I think Mark's talking about here is more about, well, hang on, if this is about the know-how around the drone job that I'm carrying on with, and it's the know-how about where I'm based, where the client is, and all that kind of information that could eventually be passed on to somebody else, and that becomes public knowledge. And if that does become public knowledge, to what extent is the regulator responsible for that? And I think that's the key question here. That, Mark, is not written into law yet. And I think that is going to become a very contentious issue, especially now that, I've gone through, like many others, like Ian, the operator ID and all of that business with the CAA, to find out that it's a third-party company that's got hold of all of our data.
Yeah,
what assurances have we had to say that data is going to be managed in the right way and protected in the right way? Well, we've had none.
And I think if I remember correctly, now I could be wrong, so I've got to be slightly careful. I'm going to put a little disclaimer. I could be wrong on this. If I remember correctly, there is going to be something where once drones are flying around and your operator ID is identified, people can literally look up who you are. There's nothing to say it's 100% going to be only accessible by the police. Now, I could be wrong, but yeah, it's quite.
Yeah, that may be correct. I'm just plugging my phone in. Sorry. There we go. Yeah, I mean that may absolutely be correct. I think the whole data issue, with respect to UTM in itself, and this is some of the stuff that I'll be covering on, my PhD at Cranfield, is how is data going to be managed? How's it going to be transferred between different parties? So even if we take the next phase of where you're going from, Mark, if I want to fly my drone from Northern Ireland now across the border into Republic of Ireland, how is my data going to be transferred? How am I going to be assured that my data is properly protected as I transfer from one UTM provider to another? What is the impact of that data? What would happen if my drone crashes for whatever reason in the Republic of Ireland when I've been flying out of Northern Ireland? I think these are going to be some really important questions. I think that are going to have to be answered in due course. And where we go with that at the moment is really anybody's guess.
Yeah.
According to the other regulations, if you plan to fly on a different country, you have to notify that second country that you're going to fly there to. So
that's right, you do.
So you have two registrations: one from the country you started the flight, and the second one from the country where you'll be flying to. So that's two warnings to the authorities.
Yeah, you absolutely do, and you have to show them your permissions that you've got, and how you got those permissions and how you intend to communicate from maybe one ATC in one jurisdiction to another ATC in another jurisdiction. And I've advised on this previously, and this is going to be quite important. But the data, which is what we're talking about here, is how is that going to be managed from one jurisdiction to another, especially now that for example, the UK is considered a third country when applicable to the EU. So although we are GDPR compliant and we are going to maintain GDPR compliance, we're still considered a third country. So that is going to have some implications. But, we're not just talking about UK here. We could be talking about, countries flying between different states in the US or flying between different countries in Africa or indeed in the Middle East. They'll have different setups, different requirements around data, and as to how they apply the security of it.
I mean, for me, the biggest concern is about data collection. Companies have a USP on how they get that data. I'm not too worried about flying from country to country and being seen, because I would expect that on all aircraft. So manned aviation and drone. And part of me is kind of all right with that. The bit I don't like is the bit where it shows, like you said earlier, Richard, it shows you can work out who my client is and how I'm getting the data for them. That is, to me, that allows people to take your knowledge without you freely giving it or anything else. You can basically, it's almost corporate espionage, but in the open almost, is it not?
Yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent, Mark. I mean, it's, suddenly I'm doing a drone job on this project this week, and then 2 weeks later, another company's been appointed. How did that happen? And suddenly I've been undercut and they've been approached. Well, why is that the case? And, if I could clearly demonstrate, this is me, because I can't obviously give legal advice to anybody else on this platform or indeed anywhere else, because I've not been formally instructed. So this is me talking as if it's me. In that respect, I'd be wanting to know, well, who do I make my claim against? Because I've now suffered a loss because my data has been leaked somewhere or has been accessible to somebody else that it shouldn't have been. And I agree with you. I think certain safeguards most certainly have to be put in place in the future. And do I have confidence in that? No, I don't at the moment. And the reason for that is I was one of those people that suffered from the CAA phishing attack that we all heard about over a year ago.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And I directly received phishing emails from the CAA, having worked for the CAA previously. And so, if somebody was to respond to those phishing emails from the CAA saying, by the way, we've got your data, please respond with X, Y, and Z, including your credit card details. Some people naturally think that that's a legitimate email. And I wouldn't just say it's a CAA, this is a global thing. Phishing attacks happen all the time of people purporting to be somebody else. And how do we make sure that we're very careful about that and safeguarded by that? And through regulation, we can be, because it's regulation that gives us great confidence in knowing who's liable for what and when. But we're not seeing some great law at the moment. And, just to divert slightly, I've been pressing this issue with the drone bill that we're now seeing going through the House of Lords. But, yeah, so those are my thoughts on that, Mark.
Well, I am thinking I might have to ask the DFT through Freedom of Information Act -CAA to their aviation on this. I might just put in so they can't deny it was never questioned or never asked of them. There's got to be something somewhere, just so the paper trail exists in some format, because it's just easy. I mean, I will write to my local MP about it because it's the right thing to do and go, look, this is not right. Please, think about this,
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in addition to the drone bill, please do write to your MP. And if any way I can support you or other people in our industry or our community in the UK in writing to MPs, please feel free to get in contact with me. I'm, more than happy to assist.
This channel's just full of failures. Peter the failure, because he's invented a fantastic thing and he's shared it with the world. Richard the failure, because he's offering to help in the industry. This is not how the drone industry works, people. This isn't how it works. We stitch it up for ourselves and we don't let anyone else in. That's how it works.
So the drone's been flying near airports again, then?
Well, that video. Yes, that video. Let's see if I can. I've put the link up on it. I don't know if you've had a chance to. No, thank you for saying that, Richard and Peter. I'm sorry. It's the first time you've been here, and I'm abusing you already. But it just, the way people stitch others up in this industry just really gets my goat. And that's part of this RID thing, and a few other things that are happening in England. Or it's because people are wanting to pull up the ladder and make sure that their companies are all right, and they've got the ear of the government, and that's a huge worry. There's some big misdirects going on at the moment, but anyway, I'm going off track a little bit. Let's see if I can share this video. Let's see if I can get it right this time, and just tell me, do you get any sound? No sound. Oh, okay.
No sound at the moment.
He says we got a drone license. What we activate every time it goes up. But let's see if I can hear. It says can't be within 5. I want to get the bit where he exactly says. Oh, all right. Well, I'll let you guys watch that in your own time. Don't watch that. Pity that the sound didn't share.
Can I just say though, you did say earlier he turned it on 13 times or whatever, or
31 times. The copper said it's been on in this location 31 times.
You see, what's interesting is there's no law that says if you turn it off, okay, that you're breaking the law. I mean, I would almost, if the police did that to me, I'd almost piss them off by just leaving it switched on.
So I've missed this. So what is this? Someone's been shirt lifted at a farm, have they?
Well, there's a phrase that because obviously that's a Welsh thing, and we won't go any further with that. In your Welsh parlance, perhaps yes. There it is to roughly about the seconds. You can go away and watch for yourselves if you like. Yeah, no, they've gone into his yard, which I believe is near Heathrow, and said, "Hey, look, you shouldn't be flying. You're within 5 miles of the airfield." But then they've
assumed that he is flying, haven't they?
I think I haven't looked at all the other videos, but there are other. Well, the lad's got it in his hand. You see in a minute. I won't play it, but the lad walks up with it in his hand. So that doesn't help that case. But they've said the bottom line is they've said the drone unit will call and have a word to you from the police force, and that is what you said the other day.
And he was in the area. He was within 4.65 kilometers of Heathrow, I'm assuming, was he? Yes.
Okay, so this reminds me of something. We can get an A3 controller from DJI and have it turned on a desk. Does that count as an offense? So if I have an A3 controller on the desk with the GPS attached.
I don't think we can. I think we got to be a little bit suspect or careful what we say. The copper's just said you've switched on 31 times. He hasn't said you've committed an offence or something like that. And he's just a copper that's been sent off the beat somewhere. He's just probably come from a drunk driver and something else, and been told go and tell this bloke off in a yard. So he's not gonna arrive with the best of information, is he? But the real point is, and it's exactly the point Richard made a couple of weeks ago, it's the dear old drone unit is going to have to go and deal with it. And it won't take many people doing stuff to completely tie up the drone unit to be able to do nothing else.
Gary, I think we're absolutely right on this point. I mean, when you look at drone units in different constabularies, they're limited in number and they have a limited number of drones. And once they start getting pulled into this kind of work, they're going to be taken away from some great use cases. On Twitter the other day, I endorsed, I think it was Lancashire Police, who use a thermal imager to locate somebody or do something really worthwhile in terms of using search and rescue or even recording a crime. And that was a great use case. But those guys in Lancashire Police who are experienced now and use drones on a regular basis and understand the law are now going to have to advise their colleagues. And that'll be the same in any constabulary. And those guys will just get drawn away from it now. So that resource will be taken away from great use cases like search and rescue and those kind of things that we're seeing drones being used for, to do paperwork, to legitimize complaints, legitimize submissions, especially when this drone bill comes into place. The amount of paperwork that's going to have to be submitted, is going to be phenomenal when it comes to operational authorizations. I've talked to you guys before. Not only are we talking now about operational authorizations, but the latest air navigation order has also refreshed the 2016 definition of commercial operations and brought that in. So, so we're looking at a number of different things here. But I do believe that police resources of any UAS unit is going to be diverted to deal with these kind of issues, which is a real shame because it's a detraction from what we're trying to say in the global community about the great use cases of drones.
I bet the dog unit doesn't get sent out to talk to owners of stray dogs or something like that. It's got to be.
No, they're too busy hunting down drone operators.
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
So, I'm in Lincoln, so we have Lincoln Cathedral, which is allegedly famous. We actually have, the police had to tweet out, so they put it on Twitter. I didn't see it on Facebook. They tweeted out, stop flying drones around the cathedral because the peregrine falcons don't like it. That's a Class 1 bird. If they catch you flying around Lincoln Cathedral, technically the fine is $5,000 minimum if you disturb those birds. And I hope they catch someone flying near Lincoln Cathedral and they hit them with those fines, because it will make people think twice, to be honest. If you get a $5,000 fine for flying near that building, disturbing those birds, it's a Class 1. There's, it's worse probably than anything else.
Come on, Mark. We from the environment people, we get so many strange regulations and fines and specific authorizations. There are places here in Portugal that you cannot go walking in a wood because it is a very sensitive and protected area for some kind of weird bird that nobody has ever heard. So you cannot walk there, much less fly there. So, on the other hand, you can get your quad bike and run around the woods. So it's crazy. Come on. There's a parliament here on the parliament. There's a proposal for a study guide, a study committee to study the interaction between humans and seagulls. Come on, the environment guys are going bananas. So,
seagulls only show up where there's rubbish. They are scavengers. If you ever want to know if you live in a dirty part of a city, and this sounds terrible, you've got seagulls. I guarantee.
If you keep rubbing the cream on, they'll soon go away. If you haven't got them seagulls, you've got trouble. No, we're definitely wandering off topic here, and we've got local hero, local legend now, Mr. Hall, standing by there. Was there any other stories that we've picked up on this week that we should talk about before we go, chaps?
I heard someone put a comment on one of my videos saying that the link between the BMFA and the CAA registration system still isn't working, so they can't re-register through the BMFA's system, and so it's probably going to put in some kind of thing, postpone it until March or something for you get an extra extension because the technology is not there. That £4 million didn't go very far, did it?
That £4 million, Bruce, does it one thing even better. So what they did is they gave us an operator ID, as you're all aware. And now when you renew it now, okay, that operator ID has to change, because now they have to put GBR at the front of it, then the OP, and then a new ID. They couldn't use any nogging to go, what we'll do is we'll keep the operator ID the same, and we'll just put GBR in front of it. The software couldn't do that, so it had to give you a whole new number. And then you have to go relabel all your aircraft. And of course, if you're a model flyer, that could be 20 or 30 aircraft.
So what you're saying is we're really pushing this Raspberry Pi to its limits already.
Yes.
Well, it's a 3B, isn't it? It came out with a 3B2, so they haven't got a 4 yet. That's the thing.
And also our PFCOs, which were a 2-page document, have now turned into a predefined risk assessment, which is an operational authorization of 4 pages. I got mine today, and it's 4 pages long. And I just thought, oh my God, really? But that's where we are.
But
so
also,
extra cost there too, Bruce.
Yeah, but anything to reduce the death toll.
But the flyer ID test, so you're meant to take the new flyer ID test, or we were, but because that doesn't work either correctly, okay, they turn around and says, oh no, if you've got a flyer ID test, it's valid until it ends, because the system couldn't take your name and give you a new one. Whoever built that system, and I did meet them, and I wasn't too kind, or hopefully it's, yeah. Oh yeah,
I have to have this on here. I have to have this on the screen while we're going, because it is too cool. So we're talking nonsense.
No. You shouldn't have that. We should ask Peter what's next after this contraption.
Yeah, come Peter, tell us more.
Come on.
So I don't know. I mean, like I say, I've still got a few things to tidy up on this.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens next.
Come on, I can see that, Peter. Yeah, I can see that you've got a few things to tidy up. It looks great.
It's interesting to watch the patterns on the grass as the thrust vector changes.
Well, it's amazing how much snow he got rid of. It must be bloody hot. Look, I mean, the rest of the field's got snow on it.
And you can blow down Christmas cards in any part of the room, I found.
But you watch, is it takes? It's not dropping what I would call massive altitude. It's just, yeah.
That looks like something out of Star Wars.
It's Ardupilot, Mark. We can keep up altitudes.
It's just crazy. It really is. I mean,
put it back to again, yeah. No, it's outstanding work. It really is, Peter, and thank you so very, very much for taking the time to join this group of buffoons. Accept your honour, your barrister honour, sir, your surname. And Jose Diaz, that is a thing that Peter made, isn't it? Amazing. It is absolutely extraordinary. So I'm going to let that run through again, and as I'm letting it run through, I'm going to say, gentlemen, are there any other stories? Going once, going twice. Dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, if you want to build one of these, I understand it's on GitHub. Have a look at the Ardupilot forums. I'm sure you can find out more information there, and talk to Peter. I'm sure he'll answer any one of the 9 million emails he's about to get in the next few days. Look after yourselves, wear a mask, stay away from each other. Wash your hands and do all those other good things. We'll see you again this time next week at 2100 GMT, and also odd daily news things that I do. Look after yourselves, people. Gentlemen, thank you very much. See you all next week. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Two buttons to click, and I've hidden one behind the camera. There it is. Bye-bye.